Admiral Kane Morrison stared at the massive screen in front of him. The numbers made no sense. His coffee cup sat cold and forgotten on the control panel as he watched the radar readings update every few seconds. Each update brought worse news. "Sir, you need to see this," Lisa Baker called from her station. Her voice was tight with worry. She had been monitoring deep space communications for 12 years, but she had never seen anything like this. Kane walked over to her workstation. The woman's face was pale as she pointed at her screen. "These energy signatures are coming from the Andromeda sector. The computer says there are over 10,000 ships heading our way." Ryan Clark looked up from his tactical station. 10,000? That can't be right. Run the scan again." Lisa shook her head. "I've run it 6 times. The readings are consistent. Whatever is coming toward us is bigger than anything we've ever seen." Kane felt his stomach drop. The Frontier Watch station was humanity's early warning system, positioned at the very edge of the solar system. If something was coming for Earth, his team would be the first to know about it. He had always hoped that day would never come. "How long until they reach us?" Kane asked. Ryan's fingers flew across his keyboard. "At their current speed, they'll be here in 74 hours, but sir, these aren't exploration ships. The energy patterns match military vessels." On Luna Base, Dr. Amanda Price was having the worst day of her career. The signals her team had intercepted were unlike anything in their databases. She had spent her entire life studying the possibility of alien contact, but she had always imagined it would be peaceful. "Doctor, we're getting clearer transmissions now," her assistant called out. "The universal translators are working on them." Amanda rushed to the communication center. The base's most advanced computers were processing the alien signals. Slowly, words began to appear on the screen. Amanda read them twice before the meaning sank in. "This is the Zephyrian Galactic Empire. We demand the immediate surrender of the third planet in this system. All human life forms must prepare for relocation to designated work colonies. Resistance will result in complete elimination." Amanda's hands shook as she reached for the emergency communication device. She had to warn Earth immediately. "Captain." Jake Sullivan was reviewing the monthly supply reports when the alarm started blaring. The sound echoed through Guardian 1, Earth's largest orbital defense platform. Jake had heard that alarm during training exercises, but never for real. "Captain, we have an emergency transmission from Luna Base," Nicole Foster announced. She was Jake's second in command and had served with him for 8 years. He trusted her judgment completely. "Put it through," Jake ordered. Dr. Price's voice filled the command center. "This is Luna Base calling all Earth defense stations. We have confirmed hostile alien contact. Repeat, we have hostile alien contact. A massive fleet is approaching Earth with demands for our surrender." Jake felt the blood drain from his face. He looked at Nicole, who was already pulling up the defense network status on her screen. "Nicole, what do we have?" 43 active. Defense platforms, the lunar missile bases, and about 200 ships of various sizes. Sir, if the reports are accurate, we're seriously outgunned. On Earth, President Helen Carter was sleeping when her security chief woke her up. The president of the United Earth government rarely got emergency calls at 3 in the morning. But when she did, they were usually about natural disasters or terrorist threats. This was different. "Madam President, we need you in the situation room immediately. We have a code red alien contact situation." Helen threw on her clothes and rushed through the halls of the government complex. The situation room was already full of people when she arrived. General Marcus Webb stood at the head of the table, his face grim. "What's the situation, General?" Helen asked. "We have confirmed contact with a hostile alien force calling itself the Zephyrian Galactic Empire. They're demanding our complete surrender and want to relocate all humans to work camps on other planets." Secretary of State Karen Phillips looked up from her tablet. "I've been trying to establish diplomatic contact for the past hour. Their response was to repeat their demands and give us 72 hours to comply." "What happens if we refuse?" Helen asked, though she was afraid she already knew the answer. General Webb activated the main screen. "Based on their transmissions, they've done this before. A lot. We've identified references to over 200 conquered star systems. According to their records, no species that refused their demands survived." The room fell silent. Helen looked around the table at her advisors. These were some of the smartest people on Earth, and they all looked terrified. "What are our options?" she asked. "Frankly, Madam President, we have two choices. We can surrender and hope they keep their word about letting us live as slaves, or we can fight and probably die as free humans." Helen nodded slowly. "How long do we have to prepare?" "Less than 3 days," General Webb replied. "Their fleet will reach Earth's orbit in 72 hours. Karen Phillips spoke up. "Madam President, I should point out that slavery isn't really living. Based on their communications, the work colonies have death rates over 90% within the first year." Helen looked at the faces around the table. She saw fear, but she also saw determination. These people weren't ready to give up without a fight. "General Webb, I want every defense system we have online within the next 24 hours. I want our best ships ready for combat. And I want every civilian who can be moved to underground shelters prepared for evacuation." "Yes, Madam President." Helen stood up. "Ladies and gentlemen, Earth has never faced a threat like this before. But we're not going down without a fight. We're going to show these aliens that humans don't surrender easily." As the meeting broke up, everyone knew that the next 3 days would determine whether humanity had a future or not. Commander Steve Johnson had never seen anything like it. The evacuation order had gone out 6 hours ago, and already the space around Earth looked like a busy highway. Ships of every size were moving people from the orbital stations to the planet's surface. "How many people are we moving?" Steve asked his operations chief, Rachel Davis. Rachel looked at her screen. "About 40,000 from the orbital platforms alone. The lunar colonies are sending another 100,000 down to Earth. The underground shelters can hold maybe 2 million people if we pack them tight." Steve watched a transport ship loaded with families dock at the evacuation center. Children pressed their faces against the windows, looking scared and confused. Most of them had been born in space and had never seen Earth up close. "What about the defense stations? Are we abandoning those too?" "No, sir. Captain Sullivan says Guardian 1 is staying operational. Most of the big platforms are keeping skeleton crews. They know they probably won't make it, but they want to fight anyway." Steve nodded. He understood that feeling. Part of him wanted to stay and fight too, but someone had to make sure the civilians got to safety. Dr. Nathan Brooks hadn't slept in 36 hours. His team at the Terran Research Institute was working around the clock to prepare Earth's defenses. The planetary shield generators had been a secret project for 10 years, but now they were humanity's best hope. "Dr. Santos, what's the status on the shield grid?" Nathan called out to his colleague across the lab. Dr. Maria Santos looked up from her computer. Her dark hair was messy and her eyes were red from staring at screens all night. "We have 60% of the generators online. The power requirements are massive. We're going to have to shut down half the cities to run the shields at full strength." Nathan rubbed his tired eyes. "Do we have any idea if they'll even work against alien weapons?" "None at all. We designed them to stop asteroids and debris. We have no data on energy weapons like the ones the aliens probably have." Maria's assistant ran over with a tablet. "Doctor, we're getting interference from something in orbit. The shield generators are having trouble linking up." Nathan felt his heart sink. If the shields couldn't work together, they were useless. "Can we fix it?" "Maybe, but we need more time." "Time is the one thing we don't have," Nathan muttered. Captain Troy Hunter stood on the bridge of the Defiance, looking out at the hastily assembled human fleet. 200 ships wasn't many against 10,000, but it was all humanity had. Some of the ships were military vessels built for war. Others were converted cargo haulers and mining ships with weapons bolted onto their hulls. "Captain, all ships are reporting ready," his engineer Claire Roberts announced. She had worked for 18 straight hours to get the Defiance's weapons systems online. Danny Mitchell, the weapons specialist, looked up from his station. "Sir, I have to be honest with you. Most of these ships aren't going to last 5 minutes against real warships. We're flying repair jobs and cargo haulers against an empire that conquered 200 star systems." Troy knew Danny was right, but he wasn't going to give up. "Maybe not, but we're going to make them work for every inch. Besides, we might surprise them." They probably think all humans are as soft as the other species they conquered. Claire smiled grimly. They obviously haven't read much human history. Exactly. Let's show them what they're really dealing with. Meanwhile, Intelligence Officer Alex Parker was having better luck than anyone expected. The alien communications were getting clearer as their fleet moved closer to Earth. What he was learning made his blood run cold. "General Webb, you need to see this," Alex called out from his workstation in the command bunker. General Webb walked over and looked at the translated alien messages on Alex's screen. His face got darker as he read. "They're not just planning to enslave us," Alex explained. "They want to strip mine Earth completely. Every useful mineral, every drop of water, everything. After they're done, there won't be a planet left." "What about the human survivors?" Webb asked. "Work camps on dead worlds. According to their records, most slave species die within 2 years. They use up people the same way they use up planets." Webb felt sick. "So surrender isn't really an option?" "No, sir. Either we win or we all die. There's no middle ground." Ambassador Grace Thompson was making one last attempt at diplomacy. The communication channel to the alien fleet was crackling with static, but she could hear the alien commander's voice clearly enough. "This is Ambassador Thompson representing Earth. We request a meeting to discuss terms." The reply came back immediately in heavily accented English. "I am Supreme Admiral Zarthak of the Zephyrian Empire. There are no terms to discuss. You surrender completely or you die completely. Those are your only choices." Grace took a deep breath. "Surely we can find some middle ground. Earth has resources you want, but we also have knowledge and skills that could be valuable to your empire." The alien's laugh was cold and harsh. "Primitive insects do not negotiate with gods. Your species is weak and soft like all the others. We have conquered. You build pretty cities and make art instead of preparing for war. You are already defeated." Grace felt anger rising in her chest. "You might be surprised what humans can do when they're cornered." "Surprised? By you? We have destroyed civilizations that were building starships when your species was still living in caves. You have 47 hours remaining." The communication channel went dead. Grace stared at the silent radio for a long moment, then picked up the secure line to President Carter. "Madam President, diplomacy has failed. They won't even consider negotiation." Back at the Frontier Watch Station, Admiral Kane Morrison was coordinating the final preparations. His team had stayed at their posts even though they knew the alien fleet would reach them first. "Admiral, we're getting detailed scans of their ships now," Lisa Baker reported. "These vessels are huge. Their smallest ships are bigger than our largest battleships." Kane studied the images on his screen. The alien ships looked like metal cities floating through space. Each one probably carried more firepower than Earth's entire defense fleet. "Any weaknesses?" Kane asked hopefully. "Ryan," Clark shook his head. "They're heavily armored and have multiple weapon systems. But sir, there is one thing. They're flying in a very tight formation. They don't seem worried about attack from any direction." "What does that tell us?" "Either they're overconfident, or every species they've fought before just sat still and waited to die." Kane smiled for the first time in 2 days. "Well, they're about to learn that humans are different." As the countdown continued, people all over Earth were making their final preparations. Children were being moved to the deepest, underground shelters. Soldiers were checking their weapons one last time. Scientists were running final tests on experimental technologies. But something else was happening too. Messages were being sent between Earth's scattered defense stations. Plans were being made. Weapons were being moved to hidden positions. The aliens had made one crucial mistake. They had given humanity time to prepare, and humans were very good at preparation. They were about to learn that the species they thought were primitive insects had some very unpleasant surprises waiting for them. President Carter stood in the command bunker, looking at the tactical displays showing Earth's defenses. They looked pitifully small compared to what was coming, but she felt a strange sense of calm. "General Webb, send a message to all units. Tell them we're not fighting for victory. We're fighting to show the galaxy that some species refuse to kneel. Yes, Madam President and General, make sure they know that win or lose, humanity goes down fighting. President Carter looked at the clock on the wall of the command bunker. 12 hours. That was all the time humanity had left before the alien ultimatum expired. She had not slept in 2 days, but her mind was clearer than it had ever been. General, Webb, is Operation Last Stand ready? General Webb nodded grimly. All units are in position, Madam President. The stealth ship Shadow is prepared for the mission. And our message? Dr. Lewis and Commander Stone finished it an hour ago. It's loaded and ready to transmit. Carter took a deep breath. Then let's show these aliens who they're really dealing with. Captain Paul Anderson checked his instruments one more time. The Shadow was the most advanced stealth ship humanity had ever built, designed for reconnaissance missions behind enemy lines. Today it would carry the most important message in human history. Beth, how close can you get us to their flagship? Paul asked his navigator. Beth Turner studied her charts. I can get us within 500 kilometers before their sensors pick us up. That should be close enough for a direct transmission. Gary Coleman looked up from his system station. Captain, all stealth systems are green. Communications array is ready. We can broadcast on all their frequencies simultaneously. Paul nodded. Remember, we only get one shot at this. Once we transmit, they'll know exactly where we are. Understood, sir, Beth replied. But this message needs to reach them no matter what happens to us. The Shadow moved silently through space toward the massive alien fleet. The enemy ships were enormous, each one larger than any human city. Their dark hulls bristled with weapons that could destroy entire planets. Paul had never felt so small, but he had never felt more determined. In the command bunker on Earth, Dr. Susan Lewis watched the psychological profile data scroll across her screen. She was humanity's leading expert on alien psychology, though until 3 days ago, that had been purely theoretical work. Commander Stone, are you sure this approach will work? She asked. Commander Rick Stone looked up from his strategic analysis. Doctor, we've studied every piece of data we have on the Zephyrian Empire. They've conquered over 200 star systems, and every single species surrendered or fled when faced with their demands. So they've never encountered real resistance? None. Every species they've met has been peaceful. They explore space looking for safe places to live, not dangerous ones. When the Zephyrians show up, these species either give up immediately or run away to hide on remote planets. Dr. Lewis nodded. But humans are different. Completely different. We're the only species they've encountered that actually seeks out danger and conflict. We explore space looking for challenges, not safety. That's going to shock them. Back on the Shadow, Paul Anderson was getting close to the alien fleet. The massive ships filled his view screen, their hulls glowing with strange energy patterns. Captain, we're within transmission range, Gary reported. Beth, hold us steady. Gary, begin the transmission. Yes, sir. Broadcasting on all frequencies now. The message that went out from the tiny human ship to the vast alien armada was unlike anything the Zephyrians had ever received from a conquered species. Instead of pleas for mercy or offers of surrender, it was something they had never heard before. A warning. The transmission began with Commander Rick Stone's calm, professional voice. This is a message from the United Earth Government. To the Zephyrian Galactic Empire, you have demanded our surrender and threatened our extinction. Before you proceed, there are things about our species you need to understand. The aliens who received the message expected typical responses they had heard from hundreds of other worlds. Desperate bargaining, offers of tribute, promises of cooperation. Instead, they got something that made their blood run cold. You have studied our military capabilities and found them lacking. You have analyzed our technology and deemed it primitive. You have observed our peaceful cities and concluded we are weak. You are wrong on all counts. The message continued, with footage that Dr. Jennifer Walsh, the xenopsychologist, had carefully selected. It showed human history, but not the parts that other species usually shared when making first contact. Instead of art and music and scientific achievements, it showed wars. This is the Battle of Thermopylae, where 300 humans held off, an army of thousands until they were all dead. This is the siege of Stalingrad, where humans fought building by building, room by room, never retreating. This is Iwo Jima, where humans fought for every foot of ground against impossible odds. Supreme Admiral Zarthak watched the transmission from his flagship with growing unease. His intelligence officers had told him that humans were typical prey, species, soft and weak like all the others, but the images he was seeing showed something else entirely. Sub-Commander Veltar, "What is this?" Zarthak demanded. I do not know, Supreme Admiral. Our analysis indicated they were a peaceful species focused on art and exploration. The human message continued relentlessly. You believe we are like the other species you have conquered. You think we will flee to remote worlds and hide, or surrender and hope you show mercy. You are mistaken. We are the species that turned our entire planet into a battlefield and kept fighting. We are the species that split atoms to make weapons. We are the species that survived ice ages, plagues, and global wars by refusing to give up. More footage followed. Humans fighting in the trenches of World War I, never retreating despite poison gas and artillery. Humans landing on beaches, under heavy fire, advancing despite massive casualties. Humans in spacesuits working on damaged space stations while explosions went off around them. Every species you have encountered before us explored the galaxy looking for safe places to establish colonies. We explored the galaxy looking for challenges. Every species you conquered built their civilizations in hidden locations, hoping you would never find them. We built ours in the most obvious places possible and dared the universe to come at us. Colonel Bruce Hayes appeared on screen for the final part of the message. He was a veteran of 3 wars, with scars on his face, and hands that spoke of decades of combat. When he looked into the camera, his eyes were completely calm. You have made one critical error in your planning. You have given us time to prepare, and you have united every human being on this planet and beyond with a single purpose. We are not like the other species you have conquered. We do not surrender. We do not flee. We do not negotiate with bullies, and we do not forget. The message continued with something that shocked the aliens even more. Instead of showing them Earth's defensive positions or military strength, it showed them human culture during wartime, factories that had been converted to produce weapons overnight, civilians building bombs in their basements, children as young as 10 years old learning to fight. You offered us 72 hours to surrender. We used those 72 hours to prepare for war. Every man, woman, and child on Earth now knows you exist, and every single one of them has volunteered to fight you. We have turned our entire solar system into a fortress. We have united every human settlement from Mercury to Pluto under one banner: resistance. Dr. Walsh had included one final psychological element designed to unnerve an enemy that had never faced real opposition. The message showed human celebrations during wartime, people dancing in the streets during bombing raids, soldiers singing while marching to certain death, civilians cheering as they volunteered for suicide missions. You see, this is what you failed to understand about us. Other species see war as something terrible to be avoided. We see it as something that brings out the best in us. You have not threatened us with extinction. You have given us purpose. Colonel Hayes returned for the final words of the message. Behind him, images showed the construction of weapons, the movement of fleets, and the preparation of defenses throughout the solar system. This is our response to your ultimatum. We reject your demands. We reject your authority. We reject your right to exist. You came here expecting to find another weak species to add to your collection of slaves. Instead, you have found the one species in the galaxy that fights harder when cornered. You wanted a war. You are about to get one. The transmission ended with a simple statement that echoed through every alien ship in the fleet. This is Earth. We do not surrender. On the shadow, Paul Anderson watched his crew complete the transmission. Almost immediately, alien ships began moving toward their position. "Captain, they've spotted us," Beth reported. "Mission accomplished," Paul said calmly. "Gary, did the message get through?" "Yes, sir. Full transmission to their entire fleet." Paul smiled. "Then we've done our job. Let's see what they do with it." Supreme Admiral Zarthak stared at the screen in his command center. The human message had finished playing 3 hours ago, but he kept watching it over and over. In 200 conquered systems, no species had ever sent him anything like this. Sub-Commander, Feltar, what is your analysis of their military capabilities? Zarthak asked. Feltar looked nervous as he consulted his reports. Supreme Admiral, our initial scans showed minimal defenses. A few orbital platforms, some small ships, basic missile systems. Nothing that should concern us. Then explain what we are seeing now. The main screen showed the human solar system, but it looked completely different than it had 3 days ago. What their sensors had dismissed as mining operations and research stations were now revealing themselves as heavily armed military bases. Commander Frank Williams smiled as he watched the alien fleet's confusion from his hidden command center on Ceres. The Sol Defense Network had been humanity's best-kept secret for 15 years. What looked like asteroid mining operations were actually fortress stations with enough firepower to destroy small moons. Captain Morgan, are all stations reporting ready? Frank asked. Captain Lisa Morgan's voice came through the communication system from her battle station hidden in the asteroid belt. All 67 stations are online and armed. The aliens are about to get a very unpleasant surprise. What about the surface installations? Colonel Patterson reports that all ground-based weapons are ready. They've been disguised as communication towers and research facilities for years. The aliens have no idea what's coming. On Earth, Colonel Sarah Patterson was coordinating the planet's surface defenses. The aliens expected to find a defenseless world with cities full of scared civilians. Instead, they were about to discover that every major city had hidden weapons capable of striking targets in orbit. General Webb, we have confirmation from all defensive positions, Sarah reported. The aliens are moving into our trap perfectly. General Webb nodded with satisfaction. They're so used to easy victories that they've forgotten how to fight a real war. Let's remind them. In space, Admiral Carl Thompson was preparing to spring the largest part of humanity's trap. The alien scanners had detected about 200 human ships scattered around the solar system. What they hadn't detected were the 1,500 additional ships hiding in the shadows behind Jupiter's moons, powered down and invisible to sensors. All ships, this is Admiral Thompson. Prepare for Operation Payback. Remember, the element of surprise only works once. Make it count. The human fleet had spent 3 days moving into position while the aliens focused on Earth. Every cargo hauler, mining ship, and passenger transport that could mount weapons had volunteered for the mission. They weren't pretty, but they were ready to fight. Supreme Admiral Zarthak was beginning to understand that something was very wrong. His intelligence reports had been completely incorrect about human capabilities. The species he had dismissed, as primitive insects, had turned their entire solar system into a weapons platform. Supreme Admiral, we are detecting massive energy buildups throughout the system, his sensor operator reported. The humans appear to have hidden weapons everywhere. Zarthak felt the first stirring of doubt. In 200 conquests, no species had ever attempted to fight back with this level of preparation and coordination. Begin the attack, he ordered. Destroy their orbital platforms first, then bombard the planet. The Zephyrian fleet moved forward, confident in their superior numbers and technology. They had done the same maneuver hundreds of times before against dozens of different species. It had always worked perfectly. This time was different. Commander Frank Williams watched the alien ships enter weapons range and smiled. All stations, this is command. Light them up. 67 hidden fortress stations opened fire simultaneously. The aliens had expected to face a few dozen small defensive platforms. Instead, they found themselves under attack from massive military installations that had been disguised as civilian structures. The alien shields held, but barely. Their ships rocked under the unexpected bombardment, and several of the smaller vessels took serious damage. What is happening? Zarthak demanded, as his flagship shuddered under the impact of human weapons. The mining stations, Supreme Admiral, they are not mining stations. They are military fortresses. On Earth, Colonel Sarah Patterson activated the planet's surface weapons. What the aliens had assumed were communication towers and research facilities revealed themselves as massive railguns and missile batteries. "Fire," Sarah commanded. The sky above Earth lit up as hundreds of hidden weapons opened fire on the alien fleet. The aliens had planned to stay safely in high orbit while they bombarded the planet. Instead, they found themselves under attack from the very world they meant to destroy. Admiral Carl Thompson chose that moment to spring his trap. All ships attack formation. Show them what humans do when we're angry. 1,500 human ships emerged from hiding behind Jupiter's moons. They were not sleek military vessels like the alien ships. They were converted cargo haulers, mining, ships, and passenger transports. But every single one of them was armed and crewed by humans who had volunteered to die fighting rather than live as slaves. The alien fleet suddenly found themselves surrounded. What should have been a simple conquest had turned into the largest space battle in galactic history. Supreme Admiral Zarthak watched in horror as his carefully organized fleet was torn apart by attacks from every direction. The humans were fighting, with a fury and coordination that no species had ever shown before. "Supreme Admiral, we are taking heavy casualties," Veltar reported. "Request permission to retreat." The word retreat had never been spoken on a Zephyrian command ship before. In 200 conquests, they had never needed to retreat. Denied. "We are the Zephyrian Empire. We do not retreat from primitive species." But even as he spoke, Zarthak could see that his fleet was being destroyed. The humans were not fighting like any species he had encountered before. They were coordinating attacks across light minutes of space. They were sacrificing their own ships to destroy larger alien vessels. They were fighting with a level of tactical skill and determination that shocked him. Captain Barry Nelson commanded one of the human pursuit squadrons. His job was to make sure that no alien ship escaped to report back to their empire. "All ships, this is Captain Nelson. The aliens are trying to retreat. Don't let any of them get away. Chase them all the way back to their homeworlds if you have to." For the first time in their history, the Zephyrian Empire found themselves being hunted by their intended victims. Human ships pursued the retreating aliens beyond the solar system, harassing them constantly and preventing them from regrouping. Back on Earth, President Carter addressed the planet and the galaxy. Her message was broadcast on every communication channel humanity could access. "This is President Carter of Earth. Today, the Zephyrian Empire learned what happens when you threaten humanity. They came here expecting to find another species of slaves. Instead, they found the one species in the galaxy that gets stronger when threatened." She paused, looking directly into the camera. "To every enslaved world in the Zephyrian Empire, I have this message. Resistance is possible. Freedom is achievable. The empire that seemed invincible has been defeated by one small planet that refused to surrender." The battle for Earth lasted 6 hours. When it was over, the once mighty Zephyrian fleet had been completely destroyed. Not a single alien ship escaped to report back to their empire. But the real victory was just beginning. President Carter's message spread throughout the galaxy, reaching every world the empire had conquered. For the first time, enslaved species learned that the Zephyrians could be defeated. Within weeks, rebellions began breaking out across the empire. Species that had been slaves for generations suddenly remembered what freedom felt like. The empire that had conquered 200 star systems began falling apart as world after world rose up against their oppressors. 5 years later, the Zephyrian Empire no longer existed. It had been replaced by the Galactic Alliance, a free association of worlds that had once been slaves. At the center of this alliance was a small blue planet called Earth, whose people had taught the galaxy the most important lesson in the universe. Sometimes, the smallest and weakest-looking opponent can be the most dangerous of all. President Carter's final address to the galaxy became legendary throughout known space. "This is Earth. We received your ultimatum. We rejected it. Your empire falls today not because we were stronger, but because you forgot the most important lesson in the universe. Never threaten a species that has spent its entire existence learning how to fight." The humans had kept their promise. They had not surrendered, they had not fled, and they had not forgotten.